I had always been drawn to the great outdoors, and the idea of living in the wilderness for a while sounded like a dream come true. So when I received the assignment to work as a park ranger in the remote wilderness of the Pacific Northwest, I was ecstatic. It was a cool autumn morning when I arrived at the park headquarters. The sun had just started to rise, casting a golden glow over the mountains in the distance. I was introduced to the other rangers and given a tour of the facilities. The park was massive, covering over 1 million acres of rugged terrain. The other rangers warned me about the dangers of the wilderness, especially the bears and mountain lions. They also warned me about the strict policies that the park had in place, including staying out of restricted areas. Despite the warnings, I was eager to get started. My first few weeks on the job were uneventful, but I quickly learned that working in the wilderness was no walk in the park. The days were long and physically demanding, and the nights were cold and lonely. I spent most of my time patrolling the trails, checking for any signs of damage, and making sure that visitors were following the rules. I also spent a lot of time maintaining the campsites, making sure that they were clean and well stocked. One evening, as I was making my rounds, I noticed something strange. There was a flickering light in the distance, coming from an area of the park that was off limits to visitors. I knew that I had to investigate, but I was also hesitant. The park had a strict policy about staying out of restricted areas, and I didn't want to get in trouble. Curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to check it out. As I got closer, the flickering light turned into a fire. It was a small campfire, surrounded by a group of people who I assumed were hikers. But as I got closer, I realized that something was off. The people around the fire were dressed in strange robes and chanting in an unfamiliar language. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but the sound of their voices made my skin crawl. I quickly turned and headed back to my cabin. The encounter left me feeling uneasy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I decided to keep an eye on the area and report it to the other rangers in the morning. Little did I know that my encounter with the strange group around the campfire would be just the beginning of a series of unsettling events that would leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about the wilderness. A few days after my encounter with the strange group in the restricted area, I was patrolling one of the hiking trails when I noticed something odd. There were 2 abandoned backpacks on the ground, but no sign of their owners. I immediately knew that something was wrong. I searched the area for any clues, but there was nothing. The backpacks seemed to have been left there intentionally, as if their owners had disappeared into thin air. I radioed the other rangers to report the situation, and we started a search party. We combed through the surrounding areas for hours, calling out the hikers' names and checking every nook and cranny. As the day went on, it became clear that something terrible had happened. The sun began to set, and the temperature dropped, making the search even more urgent. As the search party continued to look for the missing hikers, I noticed something in the distance. There was a faint light coming from the direction of the restricted area where I had encountered the strange group. I didn't want to leave the search party, but I knew that I had to investigate. I made my way towards the light, carefully avoiding any dangerous wildlife or difficult terrain. As I got closer, I could see that it was a small campfire, but this time there was no group of hikers around it. Instead, there was a single figure sitting by the fire, their back turned to me. I called out, but the figure didn't respond. I approached cautiously, my heart racing with fear. As I got closer, I saw that the figure was wearing the same strange robes that the group around the fire had been wearing. Suddenly, the figure stood up and turned around to face me. It was a man, but his face was covered by a mask. He didn't speak, but he reached out and handed me a piece of paper. It was a map, marked with a location deep in the wilderness. Before I could say anything, the man disappeared into the darkness. I was left standing there, alone with the map in my hands. I returned to the search party and showed them the map. We decided to continue the search for the missing hikers, but also to investigate the location marked on the map. As we made our way deeper into the wilderness, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The air was thick with an oppressive sense of danger, and I could feel my nerves fraying. Finally, we reached the location marked on the map. It was a small clearing surrounded by tall trees. And there, in the center of the clearing, was a small altar made of stone. It was covered in strange symbols and markings, and there was a foul smell in the air. As we approached the altar, I noticed something on the ground. It was a scrap of fabric, torn from a piece of clothing. I recognized it as belonging to one of the missing hikers. My heart sank as I realized that we were too late. The missing hikers had been taken, and we were standing in the middle of a sinister cult ritual. The encounter with the strange group and the discovery of the missing hikers had left me shaken to the core. I didn't know who to trust, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was happening in the wilderness. After the discovery of the cult altar and the remains of the missing hikers, we knew we had to act fast. We called in backup from the nearest ranger station, and they arrived within hours to assist in the investigation. The rangers scoured the surrounding areas for any signs of the cult members or any other evidence that might help us solve the case. We followed every lead, but nothing seemed to lead us closer to the truth. Then, one night, I was on patrol when I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. It was a low, guttural growl, like nothing I had ever heard before. I immediately drew my weapon and prepared for the worst. As I approached the source of the noise, I saw movement in the darkness. It was a figure, but it wasn't human. It was a massive creature, covered in thick fur and standing on two legs, like a man. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was like something out of a horror movie. I fired my weapon, hoping to scare it off, but it didn't seem to even flinch. Instead, it charged towards me with incredible speed and strength. I ran for my life, but the creature was hot on my heels. It was like it was toying with me, letting me think I could escape before closing in again. I stumbled over rocks and roots, my heart pounding in my chest. Just as I thought I was about to be caught, I stumbled upon a cave. It was my only chance. I ducked inside and hoped that the creature wouldn't be able to follow. For hours, I huddled in that cave, listening to the creature prowling outside. I knew that I couldn't stay there forever, but I also knew that I couldn't face that thing alone. I needed backup. Eventually, I summoned the courage to venture out of the cave. The creature was nowhere to be seen, but I knew it was still out there, waiting for me. I radioed for backup, and they arrived within the hour. Together, we searched the area for any sign of the creature. We found massive footprints and other signs of its passing, but we never caught sight of it again. The encounter with the creature left me shaken to my core. I couldn't believe that something like that could exist in the wilderness, but it was just the beginning of a nightmare that would haunt me for years to come. The weeks that followed the encounter with the creature were a blur of sleepless nights and endless searches for clues. We were no closer to solving the case, and it seemed like the cult and the creature had vanished into thin air. But then, one night, we received a call from a nearby campsite. A group of hikers had stumbled upon the cult's camp, and they were in grave danger. We rushed to the scene, our hearts pounding with fear and anticipation. As we arrived, we saw that the hikers had been surrounded by the cult members, who were armed and dangerous. We knew we had to act fast. We ordered the cult members to surrender, but they refused. Instead, they raised their weapons and began firing at us. We returned fire, and a chaotic gunfight erupted. It was like something out of a war zone, with bullets flying and screams filling the air. But then, amidst the chaos, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The creature had returned, and it was attacking the cult members with a ferocity that was almost supernatural. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was like a nightmare come to life. The cult members were no match for the creature, and it was quickly taking them down one by one. I knew that we had to stop the creature before it caused any more damage. I took aim and fired my weapon, hoping to land a fatal shot. To my surprise, the creature went down. It let out a final, mournful cry before collapsing to the ground. It was over. But as we surveyed the aftermath of the battle, we knew that the horror was far from over. We had lost fellow rangers, innocent hikers, and the creature itself. It was a tragedy that would haunt us all for the rest of our lives. But we took solace in the fact that we had stopped the cult and put an end to their twisted rituals. The park would never be the same again, and neither would we. But we would continue to serve and protect, knowing that we had faced down some of the most terrifying dangers that the wilderness could throw at us. In the days and weeks that followed the final battle with the cult and the creature, we struggled to come to terms with what had happened. We held memorials for the fallen, rangers and hikers, and we worked tirelessly to clean up the mess left behind by the violence. But even as we tried to move on, we couldn't shake the feeling that something was still lurking in the wilderness, waiting to strike again. We patrolled the park with renewed vigilance, always on the lookout for any signs of danger. And then one night, we received a call from a hiker who claimed to have seen something strange in the woods. We listened carefully as the hiker described a figure that was tall and covered in fur, with eyes that seemed to glow in the darkness. It was like a nightmare come to life, and we knew that we had to investigate. We assembled a team of rangers and set out into the woods, determined to find out the truth. As we searched the area, we began to notice strange patterns in the trees and brush. It was like something had been moving through the area, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. We followed the trail deeper into the woods, our hearts pounding with fear and anticipation. We could hear our own footsteps crunching on the leaves and twigs, and the rustling of the wind through the trees. And then we saw it, the creature, standing tall and proud in a clearing, its eyes fixed on us, with an intensity that sent shivers down our spines. It was even more terrifying than we remembered. Its fur was matted and dirty, and its eyes seemed to glow with an otherworldly energy. It stood there, watching us with a cold, calculating stare. We knew that we were in for the fight of our lives. We drew our weapons and prepared to do battle with the creature, hoping that we could put an end to its reign of terror once and for all. As we moved closer to the creature, it let out a guttural roar that sent a chill down our spines. It was like nothing we had ever heard before, and we knew that we were up against something truly formidable. We opened fire on the creature, our weapons blasting into the night. The sound of gunfire echoed through the woods, and the creature let out a series of angry howls. But it seemed as though our bullets were having little effect. The creature continued to advance, its massive form seeming to dwarf us in comparison. We could feel our hearts pounding in our chests as we stood there, facing off against this impossible foe. We knew that we had to find a way to defeat it, but we were running out of options. And then something strange began to happen. The creature's form seemed to shift and warp, like it was transforming into something else entirely. We watched in horror as the creature seemed to grow larger and more powerful, its fur becoming matted and tangled as it changed form. It was like something out of a nightmare, and we knew that we were in trouble. We fired our weapons at the creature, hoping to land a fatal shot, but it seemed as though nothing could stop it. And then the creature charged. It moved faster than we ever thought possible, its massive form seeming to dwarf us as it bore down upon us. We braced ourselves for the impact, knowing that this would be the fight of our lives. We stood there, staring down the creature as it barreled towards us. But the outcome of the final showdown with the creature remains unknown. The impact of the creature's charge was jarring, knocking us to the ground and sending our weapons skittering across the forest floor. We scrambled to our feet, trying to regain our bearings as the creature roared triumphantly. We knew that we were in deep trouble. Our weapons had proved ineffective against the creature's incredible resilience, and we were running out of options. But we refused to give up hope, determined to find a way to defeat the creature and save ourselves and the park. We made a quick assessment of our surroundings, looking for any advantage that we could use to our benefit. But the creature was too quick, too powerful, and too intelligent. It seemed to anticipate our every move, always one step ahead of us. As we fought against the creature, we could feel our bodies growing weaker with every passing moment. Our muscles ached, our breathing was labored, and our minds were racing with fear and desperation. And then, suddenly, everything changed. The creature let out a deafening roar, and we saw a glint of light in the distance. It was like something out of a movie, but it was real. A group of hunters had arrived on the scene, armed with rifles and a determination to help us defeat the creature. With renewed energy and hope, we joined forces with the hunters, working together to take down the creature once and for all. We moved in coordinated attacks, each of us taking turns distracting and engaging the creature while the others landed shots. The battle was long and grueling, but in the end, we emerged victorious. The creature let out a final blood-curdling scream as it collapsed to the ground, defeated. We gathered around the creature's body, feeling a sense of both triumph and relief wash over us. The danger had passed, and we could finally start to heal and move forward. In the aftermath of the battle, we spent weeks piecing together what had happened in the park. We discovered that the cult had been performing strange rituals in the area, using the park's natural energy to summon the creature from another dimension. It was a shocking revelation, and it left us all feeling vulnerable and exposed. But we also knew that we had the power to make things right, to ensure that nothing like this would ever happen again. We worked tirelessly to restore the park, repairing the damage done by the battle, and making it safer for hikers and visitors. And we vowed to remain vigilant, always on the lookout for any signs of danger lurking in the wilderness. In the end, the battle with the creature had changed us all. We were stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to protect the park and its visitors. And while the memory of that fateful night would stay with us forever, we knew that it had also given us a new sense of purpose and resolve.